morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Gojibwe, Inuit, Cree, and Dakota people in the national homeland of the Red River Nation. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. I would like to introduce the members of the panel today. My name is Brett McIntyre, and I'll be chairing this hearing. Sitting beside me is Doug Marks, and zooming in is Cynthia Stevens. The secretary today is Jaswinder Kumar, and our assessor today is Matthew Barras. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you'll be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing has concluded, you can leave the meeting. We will wait hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested will be described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. Statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decision on the basis of the evidence provided at the hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the municipal board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification. Or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points to appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decisions by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1, 2, and 3 on our docket today. And just wonder if you can confirm the assessor and applicant's testimony. The first property is 1930 Portage Avenue, and it's a 2023 assessment.
Yes, Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Matthew Stephen Barocas.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please stand up. State your full name. Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Sure. Thank you. Please sit.
Thank you. And just to confirm, both parties, this is with respect to the assessed value only.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, Matthew, you may proceed with your. I see there's a recommendation. You may with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. File number 22-192, roll number 0704 045 1000 1930 Portage Avenue. It's an apartment on the south side of Portage, corner of Portage Avenue and Douglas Park Road. Built in the early 50s. It's got 17 suites. There's 9 outdoor parking spots on our record. Our assessed value for the 2023 roll year initially was $850,000 with a reference date of April 1st, 2021. I had reviewed the financials and done a stabilized valuation on it, which I'll get into in a little bit. And I've reduced the assessment to $752,000. to better reflect the actual performance of the property.
Is the applicant aware of this recommendation?
Yes, we spoke on the phone yesterday. So we're aware of it. We're very close on NOI. We're just over $1,000 away. So this discussion is primarily a cap rate discussion, unless something's changed. So that's how I'm going to just tailor my report for the purpose of being efficient.
So as far as the applicant's concerned, you have not accepted the recommendation?
No, I don't intend, as the assessor indicated, to get into NOI because it's so close. It's not worth having that discussion. The difference between the assessment department and our position is with respect to the cap rate. So Mr. Baracus to deal with that. And I'll have a couple of questions with him, make my presentation on the cap rate. I think that deals with the essence of the appeal.
Well, I think we'll have to hear your a brief summation of your evidence.
Okay, that's not a problem at all. So carrying on to page 2 of my brief, you see they've been compliant with handing in mailers every year, so that's not an issue whatsoever. There was a post-reference dollar sale on the property, so that is irrelevant in regards to the time period. But actually, it's a dollar sale. It's within the reference period, but it's a dollar sale, so we're not considering it as any sort of indication of market value. Page 3 just shows the modeled workup on the property. Page 4 shows the comparables that were selected. Again, I didn't use these. I used the actual performance of the property. So we're going to get ahead to cap rate now. Page 5. So what this is a table of an example of actual sales within the years leading up to the April 1st, 2021 reference date. It's not site-specific comparables per se. This is just displaying that there are caps that do exist under 5%. I know in the past couple of years, usually the cap rate's been 5% or higher. But with the market conditions as they have been as of late, these are sales that I myself personally found, reviewed on a 3-year stabilized basis using the actual sale price. Was able to calculate these cap rates, which range from 3.6 up to 4.79. So you can see and these cap rates, the properties, they're from around the city. They cover a wide range of year built, and you can see on a per suite basis how they range from 100,000 to above 200,000, and they're still showing these lower cap rates. That's not how the cap rate was selected, though. The cap rate was selected, though. You see on page 6, we have our chart that we have every year. This chart is just updated to reflect the April 1st, 2021 reference date. So the cap was selected by the model based on age, area, size of the property, the respective property being dealt with, in this case, 1930 Portage. So the capitalization rate assigned by the model for this property was 5.1. So it's above the actual examples found on my page 5. So when we move on to page 8, here, this is just an example of my stabilization. You see I did I actually did a 5-year on this. So I took the actuals because they've been good with handing in their mailers. So I stabilized the NOI using the methodology as appropriate. Again, we are so close on NOI, I'm not going to go into it on a line-by-line basis. The net operating income that I used, I calculated using this method, came out to 38,340, and I used that 5.1 capitalization rate as assigned by the model. That generated an estimated property value of 751,771, so that rounds this 752. That was my recommendation. The pages following, page 9 to the end of my brief, are just the income and expense mailers as filled out by the owner and submitted to us. That's where I got my figures for my stabilization table. So my recommendation is the 752,000. That's my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alonso. Any questions?
Just a couple of clarifications. Thank you for your presentation, Matthew. You indicated, as I understood, that the 5.1 was generated by the computer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it's my understanding that the computer is generating a range of between 5.1 and 5.9%. Is that correct?
No. If you go to page 6 of my report, we have our table with our different areas: office, industrial, retail. Multifamily is the fourth grouping of rows down. And we have on the third and fourth column over, we have the 20th and 80th percentile, showing that across groups within that, the center of the distribution, if that's what we would call it, it ranges from 4.8 to 5.6. So that the 5.1 does fall within the range. But again, it varies by age, area, and size. So there's a whole bunch of different caps in between there. The computer selected 5.1 for this.
Just a point of clarification. Do the parameters of the computer not go beyond the 20th percentile and the 80th percentile? Say the computer always generates a number between the 20th and the 80th percentile? No, that's just the middle distribution. So there are cap rates that are lower than 4.8, and there are cap rates that are higher than 5.6. It's just the middle, the majority, between the 20th and 80th. Those are the parameters. Okay. And did you input the data or the selection of the data to be considered by the computer for this comparable yourself?
No, I did not.
Was that data that was used by the computer available for you to pull out and bring to the hearing?
No, it was not.
So you wouldn't be able to get the computer to tell us what age group, what area, and what size was used by the computer to generate the 5.1?
It's done by a formula. I know in the past we've had those parameters. There was discrete groups on a variable basis, but this is done by a formula, so I don't have any groups. I know in the past it's been like, well, once it gets to this square footage or this year, it gets another 0.25%. That's not the case this time around. So unfortunately, I'm not able to like quantify groups in that manner.
I understand you can't, but somebody in your IT department must be able to tell us what the computer considered to generate 5.1. Is it Am I?
I don't think he can speak for somebody in their IT.
Okay.
It's not a great
Do you, okay, well, do you know whether the city has the capabilities of bringing and producing that information for consideration by the board of revision or by the municipal board?
I do not, I'm not in modeling, so I do not.
Okay, thank you. So just for clarification, you don't know what age parameters the computer selected, correct?
The age would have been considered, as would the size, the area. But we don't have, it's not like it's not a discrete group where it's like between this age and this age, it gets this, between this size and this size, it gets this. It's done by phone, but all those factors are taken into consideration.
Okay. And does the computer take into account that some properties are bought with the intention of renovating them and increasing the NOI?
Well, I mean, that's hard to, how the computer could determine that, because I mean, that would be on a individual investor basis. So not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions. Members of the panel.
Thank you. Cynthia, any questions?
You're on mute, Cynthia.
Okay, no, I'm good, thank you, sorry about that.
Doug, any questions? No questions, thank you. Well, I have one question, Matthew. The mailer shows 16 suites, yet the first page of your brief shows 17.
Yeah, I just noticed that. That's odd. And on our comparable chart, on page 4, it says 16. I have to ask the applicants and maybe look at the mailer. What does the mailer say? 4-3. It looks like 16. Regardless, because I made a recommendation based on the actuals, it's considering what they actually reported. So I'll just have to make the correction. I'm not sure why that first page spit out 17 and the other pages spit out 16. This is the automatically generated section of the brief. So it looks like 16 suites.
And that's fair enough. It was just a clarification question.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all the questions that I have. Mr. Hucko, it's your turn to make the presentation.
Thank you. So I'll introduce myself. I'm a lawyer at Thompson, but also have my honorary APCI, which is a designation from the Imperial Institute of Canada. So I represent the property owner at 1930 Portage, and in response to your question to the assessor, you'll see that on the income sheets and also in the reports we've provided, we've indicated the suite breakout and the total suites are at 16.
Okay.
So I'll confirm again that from our perspective, we're close enough on the stabilized income. If we go through the sheets that I provided, there was an Excel spreadsheet in our filing. I don't know what page is it, but it's separate enclosure in our letter.
I think that's right at the end. Cynthia, you got that page?
Yes, I have it, thanks.
Thank you.
This page was prepared prior to getting the assessor's brief, so there is a heading that says assessor, but that was what was provided to us prior to the brief. If you go to page 8 of the assessor's brief, you'll see that the stabilized NOI selected by the assessor is at 38,340. So that is with respect to the current recommendation. The selected NOI is 38,340. I had calculated it looking at the income statements. My adjustments were slightly different, but I came pretty close to what the assessor did at 37,174. So we're really very close there. I don't intend to go too much into that. The only thing I'd like to point out, and if you went through the income statement, there is a shortfall in each year when you use the stabilized income approach. And for the 2021 questionnaire, the shortfall amount is in bold on my sheet at 15,502. And that is a factor which I also consider is relevant to the choice of the cap rate. Because if you're not managing to cover your expenses, it's a higher risk property. It's an older property built in 1952-53. So an investor, in my opinion, would be asking for a higher rate of return on the property like that, given the uncertainties of the higher expenses you might have to incur just to maintain your revenue. Continuing in the material, I provided to the board, and it should be a report by Rawadi and Associates, prepared by Tim Rawadi. I asked them to pick out comparables for the cap rate study. And if we go to page 2 of his report, and I agree and I'll confirm when he described the subject improvement. The subject improvement, there's a 3-story walk-up style apartment building built in 1952. 11,136 square feet of upper floor area, and a suite mix of 11 one-bedroom units and 6 bachelor suites. Concrete block construction on a concrete slab. It's fair to average condition as of 2018. And then I'll note that none of the comparables chosen for the cap rate study that was produced by Tim were comparables that were identified by the assessor. I'll focus on a couple of them. Some of the older buildings, generally in the past, when we've gone in front of the municipal board, we have a category of apartment blocks built prior to 1956 that are assigned cap rates. And comparable number 1 is constructed in it's a newer sale date a little bit, January 18, 2021. Overall rate close to a 7% cap rate. It has 8 suites, so it's a smaller apartment, like subject. 6 one-bedroom, 2 two-bedrooms. I'll go to comparable number 2. It's a January 1, 2020 sale. Cap rate of close to 5%. It's 3-story, has about the same square feet, 7 one-bedroom suites and 7 two-bedroom suites for a total of 14 suites. And it's on Boardroom. I'll skip over comparable number 3 because that was constructed in 2018. Comparable number 4 is a bit outside the range. It is at a cap rate of 5.6. It's a little bit larger. It's 2-story. It has one bachelor suite and 16 one-bedroom suites and 6 two-bedroom suites, so it's similar size. At a cap rate of 5.6%. The next one is a larger apartment block. But at least it gives you an idea of one of the larger 1969 apartment block. It's in that 5.24 range. And a comparable number 6 again is a larger apartment block, 1969, 5.34, so in that same kind of range. And then comparable number 7. So these last comparable number 6, 7 and 5 are all 2019 sale. And comparable number 7 comes in at nearly 5.6. It's a 2-story, has 6 one-bedroom suites, 12 two-bedroom suites, so it's both the same number of suites, and we're getting a 5.6. The comparable number 8 is an older sale, December 21, 2018, an overall rate of 5.7. Also a 2-story, 1959, so an older building. And it had 16 one-bedroom suites, so quite similar. And then comparable number 9, 2018 sale. It's a larger apartment built in 1956, the 5 stories, so it is in a different class. Comparable number 10, at 150 Avenue Drive. That's a larger apartment block built in 1974, selling at a 6.6 cap rate. And then again, a larger apartment is comparable number 11, 2018 sale at a 5.72. Turning to page 6 of the report, there's some discussion with respect to why we're seeing the cap rates that we're seeing at the various comparables, and I'm going to focus on a couple of them. Page 6, comparable number 2. It's an older construction, but above average condition, so that would explain why and the lower capitalization rate. It might be useful to have the table on page 5, so it's easy to go across. That was a 4.99% rate. Comparable number, I think there's an error in comparable numbers. So I have comparable 4. I'm looking at that is 20. It's a 1969 apartment with 23 suites. It came in at 5.6% cap rate. Considered in good condition, well located, and a good suite mix. That's another factor. Comparables 5 and 6. You may recall that I was going through those. Those were they were reported sales. They did not go to land titles, so the assessor wouldn't have access to those. Those are the ones that came in at the 5.24 and 5.34 for the larger apartment blocks, and then number 7, which also didn't go through land titles, came in at 5.59. That was the smaller apartment at 18, built in 1969, so 18 suites. It was known to be in good condition. Then comparable number 8 was a 1959 apartment. Came in at a cap rate of 5.7. Also was in good condition at the time of the sale. So that was a 1959 building, 16 suites at 5.7 cap rate. And comparable number 9 is a larger apartment, but it was subject to extensive renovations. So it came in at a cap rate of 4.56. The comparable 11, which was the 1965 apartments, that was the last in our list, 42 units, so it was a bit bigger again. It came in at 5.72 cap rate. This is also in the assessor's brief, but there's the national analysis by the larger real estate companies. So at page 6, the assessor reports the same thing as Mr. Bawadi reports. Page 6 of the assessor, it shows the range of cap rates from 5.5% to 6%. So that information is consistent between both the assessor and the applicant. And how I agree with the cap rate selected by Mr. Bawadi. He explains some of his rationale on page 7 of his report. Of what he took into account, it's under the heading capitalization rate conclusion. I'll read the second paragraph. The subject property is located on a busy thoroughfare and generally quite similar physically to most of the comparable properties. However, the subject is known to have in the past fair to average condition. The subject's remaining economic life could be considered to be lower compared to many of the comparables given its condition. Improvements with lower remaining economic lives will generally have higher capitalization rates to reflect the shorter time period which investors have to recover their investments and earn profit. Also, the next paragraph, I'm not going to read it all, but the types of renovations that would be required for this older building would be likely quite expensive and time consuming. And you have to weigh that against the ability to get the higher rate. I've also pointed out that on the income and expense, there's an income shortfall when we're stabilizing. And I think a buyer would consider that, deciding what kind of cap rate he would put. So the recommended cap rate of 6% falls at the higher range of CBRE at 6%. And that's our recommendation with respect to what should be applied to the NOI. What I have at the end is the same thing that the assessor had, the income and expense statements that were provided by the owner based on actual income. It was fully leased each year, and the actual expenses are set out there. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Matthew, any questions?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. So I'm just gonna focus on the cap rate. So just going to page 5, which shows the summary of the applicant's cap rates. So starting with comparable number 1, 642 Sherbrooke, it calculated almost a 7% cap. Would you agree that being in the area it is, Sherbrooke and Sargent, essentially, that this area is inferior in comparison to the subject property?
Yes, I would, and that's why I chose a lower cap rate as a recommendation.
Okay. So looking at these So the second sale here, 534 Wardlaw, calculated a 5% cap. That was January 2020. Would you agree that it's significantly older than the subject property?
It's older, but as you know, the effective age was better and it's an above average condition. So I take that into account, not only the age.
Okay. Comparable 10, 150 Avico has a 6.6 cap rate. Would you agree that this is physically a different style of property? It's a townhouse style property where repair and maintenance needs might be larger. Do you think that has an effect on the cap rate?
I actually did a detailed valuation on that property, and I know the owner, Steve Aquino. That property in townhouse style is 2-story. So it does have more suites. I think that's what distinguishes it. But it's well located. That's property right around the Regent Avenue area, with good bus service. And it was well-maintained property. So, I did take that into account, though, that it is a different type. It's not a 3-story walkout. It's more like a story. And you see I selected 6% instead of 6.6% now, right?
Okay, thank you. And then just looking at the summary of capitalization rates, which properties would you put the primary weight of your analysis in making the 6% determination on? Which comparables?
Well, it's I took into account a combination of things, and that's why you see the whole range here.
Yeah.
Because taking into account the condition of the property, the age of the property type. So you can see that the rate that I've chosen, if you look at and consider those items, it's at the higher end, but not at the highest end. So we look at first property, 8 suites of the same type, 2. The Wardlaw 14, but in better condition. It's categorized as 3B basement. So that was a 5.9, but that was in better condition. So I don't want to go through everything again, but I tried to look at the condition, the age, the size, and the type. In my judgment, choosing 6% was an appropriate rate because it needed to be higher than some of the lower cap rates at good condition, which were not known to have negative recovery on expenses. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't want to get into a whole description again. I didn't put any specific weight on properties. So if I look, I did consider number 1, which is a higher one, number 10 as a parameter, but it's a bigger apartment again. There's some apartments in good condition, 7 and 8 not reported at land titles, but no sales at 5.6 and 5.7. So I've adjusted those up about 0.4 and 0.3 to reflect the poor condition of the subject property and the negative recovery based on stabilized NOI.
Okay, thank you. So there's just one more column here. It's sale date. So the city of Winnipeg bumped our assessment 1 year to try to take the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. into account. We know that interest rates have dropped quite a bit from the onset of COVID in the beginning of 2020, leading up to our reference date, April 1st, 2021. Did you weigh the date of the sale in regards to giving the more recent sale dates in respect to our effective date more consideration than older sale dates?
Thanks for the question. The pandemic didn't affect everything. So people needed places to live. These were existing investments, and the long-term interest rates were pretty stable during COVID. So there was no reason for residential properties to make any adjustments apart from a normal increase that we would see because of the rental increase by the residential tenancy branch, which allows your income to increase. Other sectors which have been reported on by a number of different like Altus, CBRE and stuff like that, other sectors that didn't get affected at all, for example, whether it's Canadian Tires, the grocery stores, the pharmacies. There are sectors which did get affected, and which I would take that into consideration, and that was specifically like office type buildings, because there was pressure and uncertainty on what was going to happen if and when people were going to go back into their offices, and the demand for office space. So that created some uncertainty in the market, but there is no reported uncertainty for residential properties. They continue to increase pretty much as normal.
Okay. So you're just saying, so the multiple decreases in regards to the borrowing cost didn't have any, it didn't make these types of investments more attractive in light of what you just said in terms of people always needing a place to live, and it's just cheaper to get the money to buy it. It's just normal increases. Would you say, just to clarify what you just said?
That's what I have read. I haven't seen in the transactions I've done as a lawyer any discussions about worry about that. People who have invested in real estate continue to invest in real estate. What you're talking about is maybe applicable to the big pension funds. I'm on a couple of investment committees for pensions, and the bigger pension funds wouldn't be going after small apartments. They look at big portfolios, and they, because of the lower bond interest rates, we're looking at more diversity and actually paying more. So there's a big increase because of the demand that was being put on the market. The pension funds try to reach a 10% portfolio for real estate, but there isn't enough real estate that is big enough for them to actually do that. So it had actually an upward pressure on some of those sales.
Okay, thank you very much. Have you inspected this property?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia, any questions?
Yes. So the report that you provided us states that the property is in fair to average condition. And in some of your comments, you have used the word poor condition. And if you have inspected it, can you sort of describe for us, what you see as the issues with the property?
So if you look at the income and expense reports, you'll see that all the appliances are old, the building and finishes are old, is my understanding. I haven't seen it, that's what I've been advised by the owners. They're getting into expenses that are reflective of a property that hasn't had a whole lot of attention to renovation. So I'm sorry I can't be more specific than that, but if you go to the December 31, 2020 report on expenses, it'd be the third last page in your PDF, I think.
Yes,
You'll see that for this building with 16 suites, there is an average of $1,000 per unit. That wasn't recovered if we look at my NOI calculation through the revenue stream. So there's ongoing maintenance and repairs that reflect an older building that hasn't had much attention paid to it.
okay, thank you. That's all I had, thanks.
My question been answered, thank you.
I just have one comment. Mr. Rawati apparently inspected it according to his document on November 1st, 2017. Of course, he's not here for us to question what the condition was.
Correct.
Thank you. That was my only comment. And that concludes this property. Do either party want to do a summation?
Yeah, I'll just do a really quick one. Yeah, so just looking at we looked at a bunch of capitalization rate comparisons. When you look at the applicants table, the majority of the cap rates fall in about the mid 5% range. The city's cap rates fall about 4 3/4. 5.1 is in the middle of that. I think that would be place to be. So I'm still sticking with the 5.1 cap. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of this submission?
I have a couple comments.
Okay, so be very short. Go ahead.
The onus is on the assessor. He's explained that the below 5 cap rates were the ones that were provided to show that you can actually find ones below 5% that they were using. The assessor in my respectful submission hasn't explained in a detailed way how the computer arrived at the 5.1%. That would be important to understand what we say. And the best information and the more transparent information that was provided to the board on the cap rate was in the material that we provided in my respectful submission. And it coincides with the upper end of the CBRE analysis, which gives a range of 5.5 to 6% for this type of property.
Thank you. That concludes this matter. Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a great day, Matthew.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
And to the board members.
Thank you very much.
That's okay. To the board secretary, that need to exclude you too.
Cynthia, do you need a break?
I'm fine, thanks.
The next two properties on the docket are the same applicant, Ms. Satanic. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Sorry about that. I was muted. I didn't realize that.
Thank you. So what I said was the next two properties you're speaking to.
Correct. Yes, correct.
We'll have you sworn in.
Madam applicant, please state your full name.
Susan Sapanic.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Matt, just to confirm, you're still sworn in?
Yes,
Thank you. So the first property, or the second property on the docket is 424 River Avenue. And just understand there's a preliminary issue with this one, Matt?
yes, there's a preliminary issue with the property. Sorry, just let me pull my my file up here. So I'll start by reading it in, and then I'll get on to that. File number 22-307, roll number 12032075100, 424 River Avenue. Roll year 2023, reference April 1st, 2021, assessed value $5,688,000. The preliminary issue, non-compliance. We're requesting that the burden of proof be shifted to the applicant for non-cooperation. You can see on page 2, they haven't submitted mailers to the city for about 4 years now. So I didn't have any recent information to go off of in terms of reviewing income and expenses. So there's been a history of this. This is not the first time. So as per legislation, I have to request non-compliance on this property. Thank you.
Thank you. And the applicant, do you have a response to the assessment?
I can't contest that the mailers have not been submitted. So.
Okay, thank you. The board will take a 5-minute break to discuss this, and we'll be back very shortly.
Okay, everyone, please be silent so that I come back.
Thank you. The board has considered the assessor's request for the application of section 53(3)B MAA, and the deferral will be granted. And accordingly, the applicant is required to make the first presentation. So if you would like to go ahead.
All right. So the subject property consists of a 5-story masonry building with elevator. It was originally constructed in 1911 and operated as the Victoria General Hospital until the early 1970s, where it underwent extensive renovation and converted into apartments in the 1980s. Heat, hydro, and water included in the rent. Laundry and parking are excluded and paid separately. The suite mix is eclectic. There are 33 bachelor suites that range from 275 square feet to 580 square feet. 12 one-bedrooms that range from 350 square feet to 650 square feet. 16 two-bedrooms, which range from 525 square feet to 750 square feet, and 7 3-bedrooms that are each 750 square feet. The property has a financial year end of December 31st. So had the property sold as of the reference date of April 1st, 2021, the income value for the 2020 calendar year would have been the basis for the market value. As this property is a multifamily rental, the property should be assessed using the income approach. Dealing first with cap rate selection. In its overview of the mass appraisal, the city of Winnipeg indicated a range of 3.85 to 7.4% cap rates, with the 20th and 80th percentile being 4.9 and 5.65. I've included in my materials at Exhibit A and B the cap rates as reported by CBRE Limited and Colliers International for the first quarter of 2021. And they both showed a range of between 5 and 6% cap rates. Given those ranges and taking into consideration the unit size, mix, and age of this property, a 6% cap rate is appropriate in my submission. In terms of vacancy and collection loss, the vacancy rate for the subject property, according to the City of Winnipeg model, is 3.2%. The 2020 last quarter vacancy rate for the City of Winnipeg, as reported by CMHC, was 3.8%, and that's at Exhibit B of my submission. The actual vacancy rate for this building has been significantly high percent, and in 2020 it was almost 14%. This property has experienced a vacancy rate that's greater than the City of Winnipeg's model and the CMHC reported rate. Some of that has to do with the nature of the area. There is an issue with the essentially people who shouldn't be in the building coming into the building. We've had to increase security, and that impacted on the vacancy rate for this building. So I am suggesting that the CMHC rate, which is a 3.8%, be used. For income, I've provided at the bottom of page 2 of my submission the average monthly rents for the 2020 calendar year. So they're calculated essentially by taking the gross monthly rents for the year and just averaging them out on a monthly basis. So for 2020, the gross potential suite income for this property was $547,702. In addition, there was some income from parking stalls and laundry and other miscellaneous fees. So those total altogether are the income for the property. The other income totals $23,453. And then vacancy, we've already discussed. Then we have the operating expenses. The operating expenses were I looked at both 2019 and 2020. Those are provided for you at page 3 of my report. And I've provided the actuals and then a stabilized amount for each item. For insurance, I used 2020 actual. Property management is just 5% of effective gross income. Professional fees, I use 2020, office supplies 2020, advertising 2020, hydro 2020, water and sewer 2020, heat in 2020, security. I've used 2020, and again, the security has been warranted for this building because of the issue with ensuring that people that don't belong in the building don't go in. I've used for waste and snow removal, the average of the 2019, 2020. For maintenance repairs, I've used a nominal rate of 1,050 per suite. The actual repairs were more than double that amount for both 2019 and 2020. For maintenance and supplies, again, I've averaged 19 and 20. For telephone, I've used 2020, and for property taxes, I've again used 2020. So on the basis of that stabilized amount, I've come to a figure of 343,895, which is 62.49 of the effective gross income, and which I say, given the age of this building, and that is is appropriate, even though it's above the city's median for the properties. So my evaluation calculation is at page 4 of my report. So again, using the income from unit, applying the vacancy rate from CMHC, adding in the other income gives an effective gross income of 550,342. Deducting the stabilized operating expenses gets us a net operating income of 206,447 at the 6% cap rate. That works out to a value of 3,441,000 rounded. And subject to questions, that is my submission.
Thank you very much. Matt, any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, 1 second here. Let me pull this up here. Okay, so just looking at page 3, it looks like the maintenance and repair and maintenance supplies, when you're looking at the actual 2020 and 2019 figures, comes out to about 2,800 per unit on a yearly basis. So what I'm wondering is, are they continuing to renovate this building, or can you maybe speak to why those repairs are, the actual money getting put in is so much higher than what you stabilized R&M at?
My understanding is that they're in the maintenance supplies, dealing with that component first. There is no amounts for any renovations were included in those figures. In terms of the suite upgrades, my understanding is there haven't been any done in the last 3 years.
Okay.
So I don't have a big breakdown of why they're so high, but again, this building is an older building, so it does does have a higher maintenance component that happens just because of its age.
Okay, fair enough. So based on its location, it's almost at River and Osborne. Would you agree that this is an attractive location?
I would agree that it was an attractive location. The nature of the neighborhood, I think, has changed over the last little bit. My office is actually just a few blocks away from this area, and I've seen a change in the area, particularly over the course of the pandemic. I'm encountering a lot more people with substance abuse issues on my way to my office every day. So I think there has been a change in the neighborhood.
Okay. And so there's no, did you review the actual mailers or was it just, this was just a spreadsheet that was given to you with the finances? Because I didn't get a mailer. I want to know just the origin of these numbers.
There wasn't a mailer, so I didn't review a mailer. The numbers are from financial statements that was provided to me by the accountant for the property.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia, any questions?
No, I think my questions have been answered. Thank you.
And
Just a clarification, all the expenses on that one page for 2019 and 2020, those are actual expenses, right, for insurance, right, for property taxes?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I have questions. Matt, you may proceed with your presentation.
Okay, one moment. Okay, so I read in the first page and the applicant described the property, so I'll just carry on. Page 2, again, shows the request for income history, and then some older sales on the property. Again, these sales don't reflect the market. April 1st, 2021, during COVID times, with the reduction in interest rate. So I didn't consider them at all. Page 3 shows our income value summary, 68 total units. Again, there's a bachelor, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. Average monthly rent assigned by the model, $834.58. I didn't have any mailers to go off of, so this one is modeled. So 48.23% expense rate, cap rate, we both are at 6%, so that's not in dispute this time around. Net operating income, $341,280 calculates $5,683,647 per suite. Page 4, rental comparables. Properties on River Avenue, there's a lot of apartments on River Avenue. I think these comparables are pretty good in terms of age, area, and size wise. They have a spread of 1 to 3 bedroom units. If you look at the average monthly rent of our comparables, they range from $825 to $933. Our subject property comes in at $834.58, which is near the bottom of the range. It's also only one of the comparables does have 3 bedroom units. That is comparable number 3, and that has an average monthly rent per unit of $913, whereas our subject property has an average monthly rent assigned by the model at $834.58. Gross floor area per unit. Our property here is on the lower side of it, but we're also at the lower end of the distribution of average rents. So taking everything into consideration, the model rent is supported by comparators adjacent to it. Cap rate chart on page 5, we agree on cap at 6. I'm not going to go through this again. You heard it last file. Page 7 is our comparisons. So page 8, I was able to find an ad online showing the property and able to get some pictures of the interior, actually condition of it. So you can see exterior on page 8, and moving onwards to the end of my brief, you can see that the property has been extensively renovated on the inside. Flooring, bathroom, cabinets, whatnot. appliances. I actually think we might be a bit low on the effective age on this property. When I look at this property, it doesn't look like a 1939. That's something that we'll have to review. But as that's what we have in the model, it's been assigned a 6 cap. So that's where we're at now. It looks pretty good. Looks like a renovated property near the corner of River and Osborne. I'd say it's an attractive investment. Looks like the windows have also been done, looking at page 8. So again, I didn't have mailers to go off of. So looking at the pictures, looking at the market, rent comparators adjacent to it, I didn't make a change to the assessment on this property at 83,000 per unit. When looking at the pictures at the end of my brief, I think that's very reasonable. So that's my presentation, 5,688,000. Thank you.
Thank you. And the applicant, do you have any questions of the assessor?
In terms of page 4 of your brief, the rent comparables.
Mhm.
I note that none of the properties have bachelor suites.
That's correct, yes.
And this building, almost half of the suites are bachelors and very
Yeah,
small bachelors. And
that's a very
those,
fair comment. Yes. Yes.
so those would command less rent.
Yes, definitely.
And do you know if any of these buildings, whether the suites have been renovated or not, or how they compare in that regard?
No, I haven't inspected these ones, so I don't have that information.
Those are my questions.
Thank you. Cynthia, any questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
No.
I'm good as well. Thank you.
And I have no questions. So that concludes one. Thank you. And we'll proceed to the third and final property in the docket, which is N Charbonneau. And I understand there's a preliminary issue similar to the previous property on this particular parking block.
Yes, just let me pull that up. Sorry. Pardon me, just let me make sure. Okay. So yeah, file number 22-304, roll number 06002449-100, 10 Charbonneau Crescent. 2023 roll year, April 1/21 reference date, 23,991,000. On the assessed value, preliminary issue is the same as the last time. If you go on my second page, they didn't submit the 2020 mailer, so I didn't have the most recent mailer to go off of. Basically, it's the same thing as last time. So as per legislation, I have to ask that the burden of proof be shifted to the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Satanic, do you have any?
I had inquired as to what happened because this one was a property that the mailers had typically been sent. The only comment I got back was it was probably due to COVID. We were, the staffing was down, and so it was not submitted.
So you're not contesting this request?
Correct, that we did not submit for 2020.
Thank you, but we'll take a short break.
Hello?
Both of you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. The board has considered the assessor's request, and was the case in the previous file. We're granting the burden of proof non-cooperation. And accordingly, Ms. Savanic, proceed with your presentation.
So the subject property consists of 5 3-story wood frame apartment buildings and a wood frame leasing office containing a central recreation room, office, and 2 washrooms. This property also has an outdoor pool. There are 180 units total in the apartment complex, 54 1-bedrooms and 126 2-bedrooms. Amenities for the suites include 5 appliances. That includes in-suite laundry, through-wall air conditioning, patio balconies, fireplaces, and security entrance. In addition, 1 no-cost parking stall is included with each unit, and also water is included. Tenants do pay their own hydro, and each suite is heated by electric baseboards. The property has a financial year end again of December 31st. So had the property sold as of the reference date of April 1st, 2021, the income 2020 calendar year would have been the basis for the market value. And again, as this is a multi-family rental, the income approach should be used for valuation. In terms of cap rates selection, I think the city and I are in agreement that 5.3 is appropriate given the age, and I'm not going to take you through it's the same reports as for the last one, so I'm not going to take you through those again. In terms of vacancy and collection, again, the vacancy rate reported by CMHC is what's used. This property has experienced a slightly higher vacancy rate than those, in part that is likely due to the fact that for the longest time, this property was the only rental in the Island Lakes area, and that has changed more recently. There's been some more multifamily development in the area, so increased competition has impacted vacancy rates. In terms of the operating expenses for this property, I have reviewed the total expenses for 2020. They were $1,013,947, which was 49.394 of the effective gross income, and that's in the model range and below the medium. So I didn't do any adjustments to that, given that it seemed to be in a reasonable realm. For the income for the property for 2020, the actual income was from the suite rentals was $2,113,187. There's a little bit of additional other income for parking and miscellaneous fees, which amounted to $19,884. So taking that potential income from the units, applying a vacancy rate of 3.8%, and adding in the other income gives us a gross income of $2,052,769. Deducting the operating expenses, the net operating income for the property was $1,038,822. Which, and again, applying the cap rate of 5.3% gives us a rounded value of $19,600,000. That is my submission.
Thank you very much. Matthew, any questions?
Let me see here. And so just the same question as the last property. I don't see the 2020 mailer, so you got these figures from just financial statements?
Yes, from the accountant for the property.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia, any questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
So,
No question for you.
and I have a question. Matt, you can proceed with your submission.
Thank you. Okay, so I read the first page in. The property has been described by the applicant. So again, like the last property, without having the most recent mailer, I wasn't able to understand what was happening the most recent year prior to the reference date. So modeled valuation is what I used. Page 3 shows our income value summary, 23,995,566, rounding up to 23,991, 47.33 expense rate, average monthly rent, 1,154.58. Page 4 shows the comparables. The average monthly rent of the comparables ranges from 1,100 up to just over 1,200. We are in the middle with our average monthly rent for 10 Charbonneau. When you're looking at the comparables, they are a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units, as is the subject property. So there isn't the suite discrepancy in regards to composition as there was in the last property. Gross floor area per unit, relatively similar, falls within the range. So the modeled average monthly rent was not amended. Page 5, 6, that's our cap rate stuff. Page 7 shows our municipal excerpts. Page 8 shows just photos of the property I was able to pull from the internet. So you can see that the property looks like it's been well kept, but it hasn't been renovated anyway, at least from what I can tell. Hence the lack of effective age applied to it. Doesn't look like there's any issues though. So 1987 it is. Then we have, to the end of my report, the income and expense mailers that we did receive from 2019 down to 2017. I didn't have the most recent one, so I don't know what they were doing in that year. I don't know why they didn't submit. It could have been because of COVID, like the applicant said. So modeled valuation was the method I chose for this. So based on the rent comparables, I didn't make any changes. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hammack, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, in terms of your comparables on page 4 for rent comparisons, again, do you know if any of those suites have been renovated?
There's no indication in regards to our records of an effective year bill being applied to these properties. They are from 1978 to 1973. So as per our records, I don't see any renovations. Charbonneau is more recent than that.
All right, but you acknowledge that the property has, while maintained, it is dated. It's quite obvious that it was from the 1980s when you look at those units.
That would be fair to say, yes.
All right. And you know that the rents are governed by rent legislation, so the achievable rents cannot be increased at the building as is.
Yes, that's true.
All right. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Cynthia, any questions?
I just, actually, it's a bit of a clarification. So Matthew, on the 2019 income and expense mailer that you provided, I see a vacancy rate of 2.6%. Is that correct?
That's what's indicated, yeah.
From the owners at that point? Okay. Because that did not seem to be what we saw previously. So I'm just looking for clarification that this is a 2019 and that the owners had reported 2.6% at that time, correct?
It's an older
Okay.
mailer.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. And
Nothing for me, thank you.
I just have one question, Matthew. There's no indication after not receiving the 2021 mailer, did the department issue a registered letter to the applicant?
I believe we did. I didn't see it in our system, so I wasn't able to get my hands on it. Legislation doesn't indicate that we need to issue a second mailer, but I inquired about it and we have been issuing them.
So
But I don't have it. I couldn't track down a copy of it though. So that's why it's not found in my brief.
So, here you go. Are you still there, Matt?
I am, yeah. Can you hear me?
So just to clarify, it's still the department policy to issue a registered request for the mailer. You're not, if you didn't receive the first one?
As far as I can tell, yes.
Okay, thank you.